Hello, everyone. Just a little quick update before the start of this episode. We speak a lot about the DNC platform, and let's just say we're not in a great mood about it. And so I just wanted to let you know before the episode begins that later this week, we're going to release a joint episode that we did with the cast of the podcast, Well, There's Your Problem, a podcast about engineering disasters, in which we talk about the creation and deployment of the V-22 Osprey. It's a great laugh. We have a really good time. A little bit sad because of the litany of destruction that aircraft has wreaked on people during test flights. However, I just wanted to let you know that it's not all downer stuff this week. You can look forward to that. And if you want to hear more episodes from us, we've got Patreon episodes that come out every week. They're available at the link in the description on this episode. And we've got bonus episodes dating all the way back to 2016, so there's plenty to listen to. $5 a month gets you access to all the bonus content we've ever put out. So if that sounds interesting to you, then sign up and support the show. But thank you again for listening, and please enjoy this episode.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is me, and it is Nate. It is August. The Democratic National Convention is going on, and as proper leftists, Nate and I are sad and depressed, more so than normal, at least, I guess. But Nate, how's things on Turf Island?
We've talked a little bit about, I think, about the psychosis of British people wanting to deploy the might of the British military against asylum seekers crossing the English Channel in like inflatable dinghies. And it's just grim. I mean, there was some polling released last week that said something to the effect of like 90% of people over the age of 65 support using the military to stop water crossings. And it's just like,
I mean, let's be fair. The British Navy hasn't exactly gotten a win in a while, so refugees and rubber dinghies will be an easy one to sweep under the rug and put in the win column, I guess. Yeah, you can. If anything, the British Empire always has racism to fall back on.
Yeah, Riley and I guested on a podcast from friends of the show, Rob Rousseau and Jordan Uhl. Their show is called Insurgents, and Riley made a point that I hadn't. I mean, I suppose I knew instinctively, but that I just hadn't like verbalized before, which is that his big takeaway from the entirety of A, the Corbyn project, and B, the general state of things in this country with regard to how things poll and what people's priorities are, is that most people in Britain, most of whom are English, since it's the dominant, most wildly, populated part of the country versus other regions, they love being miserable. They fucking love being miserable. And it makes them infuriated to imagine it being less miserable for other people, because they want to be miserable and they want everyone else to be miserable and they want to complain and they want to see people be unhappy. And so if things can get better for other people, then that is like a personal insult to them. And I think that while most white Americans are descended from Germans, I mean, that's just the general mix of people in America, a lot of our culture comes from the English. I mean, it was a British colony, and depending on where you live in America, like there was a time when the overwhelming majority of people are of English or British Isles descent, and a fuckload of people in the South are of Scotch-Irish descent. So I mean, that's very, very formative in that regard, and I feel like America has it too. America, for all of our talk of like the American dream and blah, 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 like there's a section of America that I think is deeply British in its very pronounced desire to A, be miserable, and B, make sure that no one else improves anything ever in their life. And Britain has healthcare, but I mean, they're in the process of privatizing all of it. They're just going to keep the name NHS, but it's all going to be privately run, and it won't be long. They're already charging fees for people when they apply for their visas that keep going up. They've gone from not existing 5 years ago to being to quadrupling, to the point where when you pay a visa, you could easily be paying anywhere from £1,200 to £2,000. And so it's like there already is pay for access in the United Kingdom. It's just they're doing it on immigrants first, and they'll do it on everybody else later, and it'll be completely privately run. So, you know what? It was good while it lasted.
As long as the taxes stay low, though, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we're going to go through, I'm sure what's going to happen is they're going to be like, oh, no, the budgets are bad because of COVID crisis. We need to cut taxes some more. And then, like last time, they'll do 9 years of austerity where they cut local budgets, like the equivalent of, federal funding to states, by 50%. And then when they've axed all the services that are provided, to the point where it's just shockingly underfunded, then they'll turn around and be like, well, taxes are just too damn high. We need to cut taxes again, which will create a fucking, budget shortage. And then they'll just cut more service. Like, I don't know, man.
Until all of London is the Grenfell fire.
Well, yeah, and until till everything that was ever provided by the state is either doesn't exist anymore or is provided by a private company that doesn't actually provide a service. It just skims money, and London's a direct investment vehicle for people who want to launder money in real estate. I mean, that's really what's going on, and so I don't know. This is the curse of the boomers, man. Like this is just boomerdom run rampant. They grew up with the most generous welfare state and the highest standard of living that anyone in human history has ever had. And they decided as a generation, we don't need this anymore. We're not young anymore. And they're just more than happy to fucking fire sale it. And we get to live in that.
Yeah, we get to get completely fucked by it. Now on our side, on the American side, we are wildly celebrating 4 potential years of complete, I don't know, just uselessness in politics. Joe Biden was officially nominated for Democrats to run against Donald Trump. Donald Trump's polls, they still show them pretty close. There was a couple of polls that showed Biden ahead by like 13 points, and that has immediately squashed down to about 3. So congratulations to everybody on that.
Yeah, I think the overall average is about 8 or 9 points ahead. But yeah, there was a CNN poll recently that showed him only 4 points ahead. And there was another one, same polling company, I think, that showed in battleground states him only ahead by 1 point.
And Nate, there is no joy in Mudville for me on this one. There is no like, all right, it doesn't feel great to say we're going to get him out. And I don't know, there's a lot of argument that I hear back and forth. There's a lot of people that I respect whose opinions are, no, you should go out and vote Joe Biden. And I get those. I get it. I'm certainly not going to tell anybody that they're wrong for going to vote for Joe Biden to vote out fascism. I just wish that we weren't voting in, the people who enabled the fascism. I wish that wasn't our, the leftists. I don't know if it's our just general depression that makes a leftist know these things or see these things, or if we just have a better way of looking forward. But when I look at the last 20 years of me being politically, I don't want to say awakened, but at least voting and somewhat paying attention, I don't really see a whole lot of improvement that's happened since like 2001 versus 2020. And now that I am paying attention, I don't see, you look at the Democratic National Platform now, like they put it out, they have a draft and everything, and there's just nothing, there's nothing inspiring about it. Like, so I was reading through it last night, and there are some bits of it that it's like, okay, they are saying free, for easy access to abortion. They are, addressing. They will say that they will address some things. Now, we know that that's not true, but at least they're putting it in the writing. But then you get to their healthcare section, and it's just absolute shit. It's they want to do tax credits and incentives. They call the states laboratories of democracy, in which like the idea is that they're just going to allow, like if Missouri for some insane reason decided like we're going to try universal healthcare for all of our Missouri residents. All Missouri residents starting tomorrow can go to the hospital, go to the doctor, and not pay a single dime and never see a bill. And that's great, but like that's really it's really pushing, passing the buck, I feel. like rather than say we're going to do this thing because we know it works. We know, like, we don't need a laboratory of democracy for healthcare. We have multiple other countries that have universal or single payer or some kind of healthcare for everybody, in which they can, get seen and get taken care of without paying a dime, out of pocket at point of service. We don't need these things, but for some reason, that's what it is, and it's just more and more depressing.
Something I'd point out is also that, great, I'm glad you're going to allow states to, do single payer if they want to. Like, you're not going to stop them. But, like, here's the thing. Multinational companies and huge insurance providers in the United States can destroy a state if they want to. Like, they can make it so painful for the people in that state if their government, if the people vote in favor of a single payer program or a public option, something along those lines, that it can wind up. You need the fucking federal money printer. You need the federal government. You need it to be the entire country, no exceptions. Like, otherwise, it's just not going to work. Like, it's going to be, they're going to basically use it as a test case for why it can't work. And then the Democrats are like, well, I guess we better be Republicans then. Like, it's just so fucking cowardly. Like, 70% of Americans want Medicare for all based on recent polling, and they're going to bow to their donors. And that's it. They were considering nominating Gretchen Whitmer as the fucking vice president candidate, which, like, she was once a private health insurance executive. Like, that tells you who these people are. They're basically Republicans with gay friends, and that's it.
Yep. And they're not really going to change. But, we can also talk about things that are, we're a military podcast. Let's talk about the military. Also buried inside of this were a couple of things. Once again, we're saying that we're going to close down Gitmo.
Cool.
Now,
I heard that in 2008.
For those of you who, like Nate, are rolling your eyes, or for those of you who forgot that Guantanamo Bay still exists, we do have a bonus episode coming out with Pat the lawyer about Guantanamo Bay. Nate, do you know how many people are interned in or not interned, are held captive in Guantanamo Bay? Just a wild guess. Give me a number.
75.
40.
Yeah.
40 people. And these are the people who, and again, listen to the bonus, because I'll go into it because I just recorded that yesterday. But these are the people who, like, we supposedly we can't let them go because they're just too bad of dudes, but also, like, we fucked up the legal procedures on this
basically
so
we
much
can't win a case if we tried it under the American justice system. So we are trying to find a way to hold military trials, but we constantly have to fuck with the legality, because otherwise there's no way we can win and these people would be released. And at this point, like, we've suspended habeas corpus for them. Like, this is absolutely war crimes. We've held these people without charge for 20 fucking years. Like, it's maddening, man.
Some of them have been they've been charged, but again, there's no way to move forward because there's, like, millions of documents, and anytime you're just like, well, you confess to that, it's like, yeah, that's when they were torturing me. Like, oh, okay, yeah, we can't actually use that. So it's a big clusterfuck, and Guantanamo Bay will basically hold prisoners until the last one trips over his rocker and breaks his neck at the ripe old age of 95. Now Democrats are talking about ending the authorized use of military force. The thing that has been allowing George Bush, Obama, and Trump to just wage all kinds of fucked up war in Iraq and Afghanistan without any congressional approval. I don't remember if that was in the 2008 one, but Democrats have a bad I don't know. They have this thing where they just cannot, they can't not be seen as tough, even though, like, they'll get yelled at by Republicans about not being tough on crime or not being tough, on the world stage with the military. And, like, somebody I really wish would explain to the Democrats that it's, like, okay to be compassionate. It's okay to not shoot somebody or hit them with a stick when you can do anything else. And there's a lot of talking about it. Oh, we want to use diplomacy. We want to do our first strike is diplomacy. But I just don't. I haven't in the last couple of years listening to Democrats. And to be fair, Democrats have been a little too busy coming up with nicknames to call Donald Trump than to actually, worry about policy and procedure and everything. Trump promised to end the wars. Of course, he didn't. Obama promised to end the wars.
Obama
He
signed
managed to
his first
expand them.
executive order to close Guantanamo Bay. And like I said, when I said I've heard that 12 years ago, like that was his first act as president. And look what happened.
Yep.
I want to go through some of the things on, and as ever, fuck to Jeff Smeagol. We don't like him, but he did write an article for Task and Purpose that has a summary, and it's easier to keep it in one place. So we will definitely not be linking to that article because, like I said, fuck Jeff Smeagol. But let's read some of this work here. So yeah, basically, Congress is being pressured to take action on revoking the authorization of the use of military force, which was published in 2001 and has retroactively been used for basically to justify every military intervention since 2001. So if we were in Niger, or we were in Mali, or we were in Somalia, or we were in Eritrea, or we were sending troops to Ethiopia, or we were doing stuff in the Philippines, or we were assisting people, anywhere in Southeast Asia, if we were getting funding for conducting stuff for training with militaries, we don't do direct military training with Indonesia, but like regional exercises. If we were doing troop deployments fucking in, I don't know, elsewhere in West Africa, we were trying to set up a base in fucking Liberia. We had guys in Syria. We had people in Iraq. We had people in Afghanistan. We had a base in Uzbekistan. We had a base in Kyrgyzstan. I can go on if you wanted me to. Long story short, all that funding is basically, and all that the bypassing of the justification or the assessment of that is because of the authorization of the use of military force, 2001. So apparently both Vote Vets, which is a centrist left organization, and Concerned Veterans for America, whose primary job is telling the American people that they need to privatize the VA, both want Congress to revoke the AUMF. They also are saying, according to Jeff Smeagol, the Democrats also vow to reach a political settlement in Afghanistan that prevents Al-Qaeda and ISIS from posing a threat to the United States while also protecting women's rights, although it does not elaborate on exactly how. Okay, cool. That to me that sounds like
we're really still on this women's rights things in Afghanistan.
Like, and don't get me wrong, it's
like,
important, but you got to realize that we haven't achieved any progress in half of the country, because in order to have any kind of government control in fucking Pashtun regions in Afghanistan, you can't force the kind of shit that even is like, it's still conservative, but it's way more liberal in the north, in places that are Tajik and Turkmen and Uzbek. Like, I just wish Americans could just understand for a second that you cannot look at Afghanistan as this fucking this thing that applies, in every part of the country. Like, it's an arbitrary set of borders that encompasses a bunch of different ethnic groups and languages. People are incredibly conservative in the South, and when you talk about women's rights in Afghanistan, like, nothing has changed in southern Afghanistan. Maybe, okay, girls can go to school, but like the idea that they do, like, in large numbers or in large percentages of the population is not, that's just not the case, because children don't go to school in large numbers because there aren't schools, or their families don't want them to go to school because they need them to work in the fucking fields and like herding animals. I mean, it's just such a simplistic thing, man. Like, it drives me bananas, because you know what? I was only in Afghanistan for a year, 10 years ago, and like, nothing about this fucking conversation has changed. So anyway, also they say the Democratic platform calls for ending U.S. military support to the Saudi-led war in Yemen. Okay, cool. I'm pretty sure they voted on that recently, but nothing happened because of Trump, etc. I would also say that just bear in mind that whenever this happens, it doesn't really matter if the U.S. provides military assistance, because the real gambit in that conflict is arms sales, and that will 100% continue. Like, that, I assure you, will 100% continue, because they banned arms sales to Saudi Arabia in the United Kingdom, and then they just kept doing it because there are ways. The fact that arms manufacturers and companies and such are multinational, and so as such, you can basically say, oh, well, we can't sell arms to Saudi Arabia, but like if they're making fucking circuit boards for bombs in Scotland or in, I don't know, in Michigan, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can ban sales, you can ban military-to-military cooperation, but like, they're still going to get bombs and munitions and stuff to those countries, 100%. So I would love to see a more robust plan on how you're going to both stop U.S. participation, but also get the Saudis to stop. But that doesn't strike me as a thing that the Democrats really care about.
Saudi's going to figure out a way to continue a genocide. They're not just going to stop.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and it'd be nice to wash our hands of it, but we're not going to.
Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates basically have the following understanding. Shias are allowed to be slaves or dead. They are not allowed to run countries. Flat out. That's how they look at it. The Houthis are in charge in Yemen. They are going to do everything they can to kill every Yemeni until Shias are no longer in charge in Yemen. Like, once you understand it that way, it's a lot easier to figure out why none of these mealy-mouthed fucking peace offerings seem to work. If they could do it to Iran, they would. They can do it to Yemen, so they are. Flat out. Quote here, rather than occupy countries and overthrow regimes to prevent terrorist attacks, Democrats will prioritize more effective and less costly diplomatic, intelligence, and law enforcement tools. Suck my fucking dick. The platform says, we will right-size our counterterrorism footprint, put it in service in broader regional and overarching foreign policy objectives, and ensure it never undermines the values we seek to uphold.
We're going to right-size it.
Cool. Hell yeah. That means 2 bases in Djibouti to launch counterterrorism fucking bullshit in Somalia instead of 3. You know, the country's fucking bankrupt, dude. Like, America's literally like, the country, like, everything is financed by debt servicing. Like, people are being evicted en masse. The biggest landlords in America are hedge funds and fucking private equity funds. You know, the opiate epidemic is completely fucking unrepressed. Like, it's killing 70, 80,000 people a year. Like, America's rotting from the fucking inside. And you're like, well, we need to right-size our counterterrorism commitments. Like,
you know, I've never been one of those people that thinks we need to close down all of our foreign bases, bring every troop back home. But like, kind of, I believe that now because we really got to save a buck.
We kind of did that in the 30s, to be honest with you, but we didn't have bases in Europe. You know what I mean? Like, we did it. We did it with troops in places in. We reduced significantly the amount of troops in places like the Philippines, and we pulled troops entirely out of places like Haiti and Nicaragua. But you know, we were doing this shit in the early part of the 20th century as well. I honestly think, you know what? Do it. Bring everybody home. Like, flat out. I'm so fucking tired of this shit. I'm so fucking tired of we spend between the defense budget and discretionary spending $1 trillion a year, and, you know, children are dying of fucking infected, like, cavities in their teeth, you know? And, like, people are doing GoFundMes because they're living in their fucking cars. Like, it drives me out of my mind to the point where, like, I'm reading this quote, like, I'm literally going cross-eyed. Like, I'm having to alternate eyes because my eyes are having a hard time focusing, looking at the screen. And I'm not really that tired. I slept pretty well last night, but it just makes me so just incendiary. All right. Next thing. Apparently, the Democrats are going to overturn a policy that prevents trans people from serving in the military. Good. Democrats plan to overturn a policy as well that ends policies discriminating against people living with HIV and AIDS. Good. I mean, because it's bullshit. They persecute people. Like, we will root out systemic racism from our military justice system. Fucking law. Where black service members are twice as likely as white ones to face court-martial. I mean, I appreciate them saying it. We will accelerate efforts to recruit and promote people of color in the officer corps. Okay, good. But is that the solution to racism? Is have more black military officers?
I mean, certainly when we have black cops, they don't beat on, oh, wait, shit.
Fuck. Damn. The platform also declares that service members and veterans and military family members should never face the threat of being deported. I mean, I do think that no American should face the threat of being deported, but I'm glad that they are attending to the fact that this does exist in the military. In 2018, Alejandra Juarez, the wife of an Iraq War veteran, was deported. She'd been allowed to stay in the country after police discovered her legal status in 2013, but that ended under the Trump administration. Quote, we will create a parole process for veterans deported by the Trump administration to reunite them with their families and compatriots, the platform says, and we believe that anyone who served honorably in our military has earned a path to citizenship prior to discharge or retirement. Okay, great, but here's the thing, 2 things. Number one is that, like, the people who wind up getting deported oftentimes are people who have been fucked over by the military as well, people who don't have good pay for discharges. And even if they do have good pay for discharges, it doesn't really matter, because if your argument is the only people who should be exempt from our brutal deportation machine are people who have, you know, served empire, like, it's the wrong argument. It's basically saying the policy is good to deport people unless they have borne arms for the nation, which, I mean, is at best Starship Troopers shit, and at worst is really, really fucking Praetorian. I hate that. Like, the argument shouldn't be deportation's good, we'll make exceptions for you folks because you slung lead downrange. That really bothers me. It also says the Democrats also vowed to not privatize the Department of Veterans Affairs and to invest in mental health and suicide prevention services to prevent veterans from dying by suicide. Okay, cool. What are those going to be? Are those going to have anything to do with employment and poverty mitigation and addiction counseling, housing? What is it going to look like? Because the military has been spending a lot of money on trying to do suicide prevention, and apparently it makes more people commit suicide.
Yeah, we don't really have a good handle on our sexual assaults, sexual harassment, or our suicide. The easiest way to do it is to stop, doing shitty, fucked up wars. So that would be step one, and certainly, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, though. Like, certainly I don't know how to stop veteran suicide. It's easy to say stop doing war, but
I think that also veteran suicide, the overwhelming majority, or the significant number of veteran suicides, as I understand it, correspond to the demographics on who commits suicide in America typically anyway. They tend to be men over the age of 55. And so, obviously, every single person who's been in uniform knows someone who's committed suicide. I mean, it feels like, even in peacetime, there's something about the sort of destabilization of military life that causes people to, I don't know why, and I don't want to make guesswork here, but it just strike me that there is some correlation there. But I think also, if you look at who's dying by suicide in America, a lot of those problems would be there even if those people hadn't joined the military. These are problems of deaths of despair. These are problems of people who, have low earnings or no earnings at all, have problems securing housing, or are basically living in underserved or basically completely abandoned communities. There was an article in the Washington Post, I believe, a long time ago about a community like this in rural Oklahoma, and basically the overwhelming majority of the people they interviewed were addicted to either alcohol or opioid pills. And it was a really, really grim picture. I mean, these are communities that just have no services. They have no real reason for being. They have no jobs. And families live there because they live in poverty, and people are like, well, get up and move. It's like, how? That costs money. These are people who are living on like $600 a month. How do you expect them to move and start anew in fucking Los Angeles or wherever the fuck you think they should move? You know what I mean?
Yep.
So to me, I guess the biggest picture here is like, I'm glad they're talking about it, but I feel like if you don't approach the problem holistically and understand why men over the age of 55 and in larger numbers, women over the age of 55 commit suicide, why there are so many deaths of despair in America, what are the comorbidities? If you don't address that, it seems like what you're basically saying is, well, it's the same sort of viewpoint that I just described about deportation. Well, suicide is just fine. It's going to happen, but it's bad when troops do it. It's bad. It's good to deport people. That's fine. But it's bad when the spouses of troops get deported, or troops who served are no longer in uniform get deported.
Well, the Democrats also in the platform have bringing immigration into the 21st century, and they do mention the new troops, which are the essential workers during the COVID crisis, who will have their immigrations fast tracked. So we have a brand new troop. We have the people who are forced to go work for $12 an hour because they have no other option. They cannot stay at home. They are the forced martyrs of our country, and by God, we're going to give them a social security number so they can properly pay taxes.
Well, here's the thing, right? These problems aren't going to go away. And I think the big picture that we're taking from this is looking at what the Democrats are saying they're going to do. They're setting our expectations incredibly low, and they're not going to meet those expectations at all. You find yourself in a situation where these people don't want to wield power. They want to be the team that always loses to the Harlem Globetrotters, and they want to just, not be able to do the things that they say they were going to do because the damn Republicans won't let them vote on it. That's when you fundamentally understand that their job is to be pretend opposition. It makes sense why stuff never seems to get better. And I guess my thought is this. This is maybe a dark thought, but it strikes me that whether or not Trump wins, life for the average working American will not change. If you are a member of a minority group that Trump and his nightmare fucking, if you are a member of a group that Trump has targeted with his various white nationalist bullshit, advisors, there are some things that will become less cruel, But I feel like we should not fall victim to this idea that if we just revert to stuff under Obama, that everything will be perfect. Because what's happened since 2000 in this country, really what's happened since 1980 in this country, is why you have Trump. And this mealy-mouthed bullshit isn't going to do anything, but what it will probably do is give us 2 years of them sticking their thumbs up their asses and not passing anything that's going to help. The Republicans will win back the House in 2022, and then they'll be like, "Well, damn, sure can't fucking do a public option anymore," and they'll just make ooh-woo faces about how they can't actually accomplish anything. And then, realistically speaking, Biden's not going to run for a second term. Harris loses to someone like, Tom Cotton or Josh Hawley or something like that, or Trump wins re-election. Things get worse, but they get worse primarily for people who are being targeted and marginalized, and also like the court system becomes fully corrupted and compromised. The idea you'll have thousands of federal judges who are just like libertarian blog chuds, and there will be much worse consequences overall. So what I'm basically saying is, I don't think Biden and Harris will stanch the flow that much. Things will get less cruel by like 5%, which is what the Democrats call success. And then we'll have about 2 years of them not doing anything to fix it before fixing anything becomes impossible. And then the inevitable Republican, reconquista happens.
Yeah, there's this platform has a lot of just like, these things that Trump did that we're gonna have to reverse and we're gonna have to turn around. And really, I don't see them turning around too much of it. Like some of the more blatant cruel things, and I want to be wrong. You know what? I know that we're being real downers. Nate and I are both on one today. And it's just because, we've seen it before. And we see it currently with a guy who helped like create the crime bill in 1996. And certainly Nate and I are not ones to tell you that you can't change, because we have, politically, and how we view the world. But I don't think Biden has, and I don't think that Harris is going to be the person that pushes him left. And it's good. I did read that Bernie Sanders is hopeful for the future because he sees that he is such a groundswell of some kind of left movement, because there is not one. Without 2016, there really wasn't a big push left. And now you have a lot of young millennials and older Zoomers who are learning about these things, who are politically active in some way. And it could just be that we're massively online. Maybe maybe it is like when I was 18 and nobody gave a fuck and everybody was too busy just trying to do their own thing. So I could be wrong, but just from what we see now, there is more of a groundswell of left push, which is always going to be difficult. So if you're an up and coming lefty, if you're really kind of getting onto this train, understand that it is a very depressing train to be on, but it also is one of the more hopeful ones, because either you get to hold on, when you're a leftist, you get to hold on to your morality a little bit more than anybody else. You don't ever have to say just like, well, I mean, look, I know that Biden is bad, but we need to do X, Y, and Z. And, I'm going to back up Biden because of Orange Mussolini or whatever. You don't have to do that when you're a leftist. You can always say, no, man, they both fucking suck. Fuck them. And you can make the decisions whether you vote for Biden or not, but you can at least not go sing his praises, which I think is the biggest. You don't have to excitedly go and vote, which, I mean, we saw in 2016. A lot of people did not excitedly get up and go vote, and that's how we got an electoral win without a popular vote. It is
some shit. It's bad. It's very, very bad. Yeah. I guess for me, the thing that concerns me the most is, there's a certain class of American liberal who basically sees the problems but says there's just no way for a solution to ever exist because hand wave, whatever. And I mean, if you look at the Affordable Care Act, it was absolutely, in my opinion, an example case of the thing that you and I have talked about before, which is that if you do large sweeping reforms and changes, those things, can be built from the ground up, and that winds up creating something that's much harder to repeal. Whereas if you do these wonky little fixes, it's very easy for the Republicans to figure out what mechanisms these depend upon and then just make those illegal so that, for example, basically every Republican state in America did not expand Medicaid, which means people under, I believe it's 400% of the federal poverty line would be eligible for Medicaid in other states. Or maybe it's 200% for Medicaid and 400% for subsidies. So people basically in states like Texas can only get unsubsidized market plans. And so what they do is they market them health insurance that has huge deductibles and copays. And basically these people never get health insurance in the sense. Like they have insurance, but they can't afford the amount of money they have to spend in copays or pay into their deductibles each year. So like how a person earning $6,000 a year, or a family earning $20,000 a year who can't get Medicaid because it's so highly restricted in these I almost said countries, in Republican states, basically has to get a plan on the exchange. And they're like, well, I can cobble together $300 a month to pay for my family's health insurance. But then every time they go to the doctor, they have to pay out of pocket. So all of a sudden it's like, well, if this person only earns $20,000 a year and you're saying every year they have to spend $8,500 out of pocket or $10,000 out of pocket, they just won't be able to afford healthcare. All that creates is a situation in which these people are spending some of their disposable income to enrich health insurance companies, and they're getting nothing out of it. And that to me is an example of what happens when Democrat brain takes over, because they didn't think that, we should. Basically, they depended on, this like jerry-rigged fucking thrown together different systems functioning based on, what they thought would appease Republicans. And Republicans, my co-host Milo has said this before, that, in a way, at least what you're getting with American Republicans and with right-wingers, because they're just going to say all healthcare is gay communism. And that, it doesn't matter how Romney care you make it. And to set your expectations so low, so incredibly low, to say that we've got, in 2008, we control the House and the Senate and the presidency, I get it. Okay, you didn't have a filibuster-proof majority, but you could have just fucking gotten rid of the fucking filibuster, you idiots. You had power. You had the power to do it. You could have done it. You could have made changes. You could have fucking saved so many people's lives, so many people's homes, so many people's careers. You could have changed everything. You had the power. And what did you do? You're like, oh, we can't. We don't have the votes for it. No, let's do Romney care. Like, what an embarrassing fucking joke of a party. What a fucking abomination. And like, it's shaping up that they're going to do the exact same thing, but more conservative, more pathetic, less ambitious, when they've got a far more radicalized voter base, and the situation is so much worse. And the policies that the voters are calling for, like the public option, if I remember correctly, didn't poll as well as Medicare for All is polling 10 years ago. And they're gonna do neither. It's a fucking embarrassment. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Like, yes, vote for fucking Biden. I don't give a shit. Vote for Biden so we don't have Trump, so we don't have, Supreme Court Justice fucking, Brett Kavanaugh's drinking buddy Ski. Like, but don't pretend like this is anything but it's just a continuation of all the things that created the conditions for Trump. It's a joke. Like, it's an absolute fucking joke. And he's probably still going to lose. That's the thing, right? Biden is probably still going to lose. If anyone could lose this layup of an election, it's the ones who lost the fucking last layup election.
It's gonna be fantastic. Yeah, but basically their platform has not changed whatsoever since 2016. There's no change.
They struck all mentions of the Green New Deal and decarbonizing America's energy. Like, it's a joke, man. It's an absolute joke.
Yeah, and it comes down to, we don't have to do these things. We can win without these things, and if we don't win, well, then we still get to be in power. Like Nancy Pelosi, her bag is secure. She doesn't have to worry about it.
She's got a $20,000 fridge. She can do whatever the fuck she wants.
Yeah, it's full of expensive ice cream and shit. Like, the people in charge. Like, I firmly believe that nobody should be elected to Congress that has ever made more than $100,000 in a year. That's your cap, and that's all you get too. When you get elected to Congress, you get to make $100,000 a year, and if you make a single dollar of income anywhere else, it gets snatched away from you. Lobbyists, your side hustle, whatever. I want everybody who's in Congress to be, I want people who are living paycheck to paycheck in Congress. Damn it, I want people who give that much of a fuck. But we don't. We have people who have always been rich, and yeah, like you said, this is the Lincoln Project. In its own right, you've got this. Rather, it's a reactionary thing. Rather than say, okay, here's the things that we're going to, we have to defeat Trump, right? The Rick Wilsons and everybody. Oh, we have to defeat Trump because he's bad. But like, what exactly is your what do you think should be there? Do you think it should be Tom Cotton, who wrote about, sending in the troops? Should it be Ted Cruz, who has been like Trump cucked since day one? Like, who do you want to be in charge? And they're not taking a look at, like, rather than say, you shouldn't be taking a look at the symptom. It's not the symptom, it's the disease. And the Lincoln Project doesn't understand they are the disease. And it's the same thing with the Democrats. They don't understand that the reason why things are fucked up is because they're not even, they're not going to try. And I had this argument with somebody, like, once when Congress recessed this last week, without doing anything, any kind of stimulus package for COVID, making sure that people won't get evicted or rents and everything. I said, I wish that we had Democrats that gave a fuck and would do something. And you just get all these people who are like, well, what are they supposed to do? And it's like, literally anything. I want them to do anything. Like, what we get are strongly worded letters. But, at one point in time, somebody on the floor of Congress beat the shit out of somebody else with a cane. Now, I'm not saying that we need to start resorting to violence, but it would also be nice if Democrats, like, okay, hey, the Republicans aren't going to do anything, then we're going to get out and we're going to march. We're going to organize these protests. We're going to do these things. We're going to be a part of the people who we claim to represent so that we can be leaders of the people to push against these things. But you're not. You're just going to get them to go home. They're going to campaign. They're going to, wring their hands and say, well, there's nothing that we can do. And then everything is going to continue to be fucked up. And I mean, Milo's right. Like, I'm more irritated at any given time with the Democrats because they're the ones who they're the side I'm supposed to be on. But I understand where a Republican comes from. I understand, what I'm getting when a conservative comes. If Josh Hawley becomes president, I know what I'm getting. When Biden becomes president, I don't fucking know what's going to happen. Are things going to materially improve? I doubt it. Maybe one thing here or one thing there. But my biggest concern is that, the general population of America is going to go back to like, we did it, everybody. We can go back to brunch and we can go back to sleeping in and we can, get in our Ubers and get our Instacarts and we'll be able to open up all the restaurants. Like, without completely forgetting about all of this, like, underserved underclass that will continue to be beaten down, will continue to be violated, and will continue to be seen as disposable by, the country, not just the higher ups, but, themselves, all the people out there in 2016 wearing the pussy hats. That's what we're looking at here. So it's incredibly depressing to see, your opposition, the opposition party, bending over backwards to do nothing because they're getting money from the same people as the Republicans. Like, everybody is reaching into the same pot of money, of lobbyist money, to pull out, fistfuls of dollars. It's just the Democrats are the ones who say, oh, I feel so bad about this. I feel so bad taking all this money. Oh, wouldn't it be great if things were better? Too bad that they can't be, because then the pot of money would go away and then I might have to work for a living.
Yeah, I think that, if you look back on the reason why we didn't get a public option, quite frankly, is because, well, Ted Kennedy died and Joe Lieberman switched parties because he, got bought out by health insurance people, and he was like, "Yep, not gonna vote for this." And was it Martha Cochlear in Massachusetts? Basically, couldn't do the most basic fucking Massachusetts thing about like pretending to actually like the Red Sox. She went up losing to whatever that moron's name is, who is now Trump's ambassador to New Zealand. And the one that Elizabeth Warren wound up beating him in the next election. But had this, we might have gotten a public option. Who knows what that would have looked like, but that would have been 10 years ago. We at least had an opportunity to see more. Instead, we have this nightmare bullshit system. I mean, the exchange is so incredibly bad. I bought health insurance on the exchange in New York, and like New York's is at least functional, but like it's an absolute abortion. It's such a nightmare to navigate it. And I mean, Britain sucks, but here's how health insurance works in Britain. You don't need it. If you work for an employer that provides private insurance, great, but chances are good that you are going to be, there are very few private hospitals, so if you're going to be admitted for anything, you're going to be admitted to a public hospital anyway. Your doctor's office is actually a private business. That's the case under the NHS, but you go there, you get registered, you get an appointment, you either make a phone call or you register in person, and you show up, and this just, like, the weirdest thing in the world for me is when you get done being seen by a nurse or a PA or, a technician or a doctor or whatever. I've had routine checkups. I've had an ultrasound to check for these tumors that I have, they're fatty tumors in my body. And I've had dental surgery to remove a broken tooth that they actually had to remove in a dentist surgery, wing of a hospital. And the weirdest part of all of it is that every time you leave, they're like, all right, have a good day. And you don't have to go and fucking pay a bill. I'm always like, am I allowed? Am I sneaking out? Like, that's the way I feel. And like, there are problems with the NHS. I feel like we could do an episode on just some of the issues that I've experienced so people understand that, like, is Medicare for All the solution? Yes, but it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. No. But the thing about it is that despite those problems are to me like similar to the problems I had with the VA. Like, if it was just, if they weren't constantly under the gun, maybe they could have a better system for scheduling. Maybe it would be easier to get information. The problem that I have with the NHS is that it's hard to get an appointment and know when that appointment is for like a specialty thing. You'll just get a letter in the mail, which, I mean, is how the VA works. And sometimes you'll deal with issues where one person will tell you one thing and then you'll go and the other person will say, no, that's not the case. And then you can't get an answer in any one place. But that's really dependent on where you live. Like where we live, a lot of the funding for some like specialty clinics and stuff has been cut. And that's the Tories fucking strangling the goddamn NHS. But the point I'm trying to make here is that for all the times that I've had to go to the doctor, which I mean, not that often, because I mean, I'm healthy and young. It's not perfect, but it's not a nightmare either. And I think the biggest point here is that I know if I get hurt, I can go to the doctor and I will be asked to pay nothing. When you go to the dentist, you do have to pay, but it's not a super high amount, but it still sucks. And hilariously, the reason why dental care isn't free is because they cut dental funding in the 50s so they could afford to go to war in Korea. Not joking, but I know that I don't have to worry about going
Technically, that war is still going, Nate, so it makes sense.
It does, yeah. I mean, why have dental care in Britain, a country famous for having good teeth, when you can go to war in Korea? Yeah, long story short, man, it's grim stuff, but like, I know that what exists here will stop me from having medical bills, and I will not go bankrupt if I get sick or get hurt. And that, to me, like, I just... for all of the complaints I have, like, I think it's really hard to, I mean, I just have no faith in America. I have zero faith that if I spend 10 years in this country and I move back to America, that it'll be any different than it was when I left. Like, people will be poorer and angrier and we'll have like sweet new apps that are your boss, but like, will this have gotten fixed? No. And I think the primary reason is when the Democrats have power, they refuse to wield it. Like, they are responsible for this. They refuse to provide an alternative to the idea that all you can expect is for things to get worse, and for the Republicans to just tell you that that Jesus wants everything to be fucking privatized, and that like that corporations should be allowed to vote. Like,
what happens is they get pushback from Republicans, and so they say, well, let's meet in the center, and Republicans say, no, you're going to do it our way. And then when Republicans are in power, Democrats push back against them, and the Republicans say, no, we're going to do it our way. And it's always, the Democrats are always trying to, they're out of breath trying to rush across the aisle because the Republicans aren't even moving towards the middle of the aisle to reach out to anybody. And therein lies our problem. That's how the Democrats keep getting yanked to the right. It's how, you've got your Colin Powell is going to be speaking at the DNC. Like, are you fucking kidding me? One of the architects of the Iraq War, a man who stood up and lied in front of the UN, is going to be a part of your platform here. Like, collectively as a nation, we just have no I don't know. We only remember things for a week. Like it's and my wife and I were actually talking about this because there is a specific psychological, like if you have some sort of psychological trauma, you might not have long-term memory, and it could be because of abuse, some kind of traumatic thing that happened in your younger years, but you just have no memory beyond like a week or a month or so. You can't, anything beyond a month ago is just a blank slate. And collectively as a country, I think we're kind of like that because this country is nothing but abuse. Like every day to wake up in this country and to live in it and to deal with the bullshit of, now it's like I'm going out. I need to get a mask. I need to make sure that I'm keeping socially distant. I need to do this. I need to do that. And at the same time, you're worried about bills because maybe your partner or your spouse doesn't have the income that they used to have. You're worried about your kids because the schools aren't open every day. And this is just, today. Even a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you still have these worries. Maybe they're not as prevalent, but they are still there. Every day living in America is being a fucking abuse victim. If you are not upper class, if you're not rich, if you're not financially stable, you're basically being abused. And there's nobody that is trying to do anything to fix that. There's no one coming to save you from that abuse. You just have people who are heaping more abuse on or are gaslighting you into, and I'm using the actual term of gaslighting here to tell the poor people in rural America that, we're the Republican Party. We're the ones who love God and love guns. So you got to vote for us. And, you shouldn't vote for those damn commies who want to give you free prescription medicine and give you free health care and make sure that, your son or your daughter who is wrapped up in opioids gets the help that you need. We don't want that because that would mean that Jeff Bezos would have to pay higher taxes and that's un-American, right? And, I'm not saying that everybody in rural America is dumb and falls for that, but like a lot of people do. And not just rural America, people in the cities. People fall for this shit constantly, whether it comes from the right or the left. And I think for me, that's the most depressing part is just that we're so gaslit that we do not remember, hey, Colin Powell's bad. George Bush is bad. And you know what? In 15 years, in 20 years, when we have dictator for life, Tom Cotton, the Democrats are going to be like, yeah, remember when Donald Trump, said that he was going to delay the election, but he didn't? Man, I miss those days. Like we're goose stepping towards fascism and just doing an aw shucks, like it sure could be worse, couldn't it? Like without ever trying to make things materially better. So that's where we're at. It's fun times. What a time to be alive. And this is why I don't blame anybody for being drunk or stoned on a regular basis anymore.
Yeah.
Because fuck it, dude. It's hard. It's hard to be. And even if you are financially stable, even if you have, like, as I said, compassion for your fellow man, where you think like, people should have medical, like I have good health insurance, and I have the ability to pay my co-pays and I'm young and healthy but I still want better things for other people. Like I'm not sitting here saying, well, I've got mine, so fuck it. So it's depressing because I know people who are in those situations and you see the people in those situations online all the time. And there's like literally there's nothing you can do. It's so incredibly powerless. You feel so powerless. And there are things, there are direct actions. There are, you can, I know the Socialist Rifle Association does a lot of food drives depending on, there's organizations, local organizations that do a lot of great and wonderful things. And if you really want to feel empowered, those are great ways to do it, to be on a local stage. But man, when you look at things nationally, dude, it is fucking bleak. Especially if you're a person who gives a fuck about other people, and don't just fall into the bullshit. Like seeing people say like, look, I mean, Biden's not my first choice, but we've got to go do it. And it's like, I'm so sick and tired of being told like, you got to do what you got to do. Like I would love, like honestly, I could have gotten behind Mayor Pete more than I would get behind Joe Biden. Like Mayor Pete is a dipshit, but I mean, he's young, he's impressionable. I feel like, in some sort of power capacity, maybe Probably not, but I feel like Mayor Pete could be swayed probably more than Joe Biden ever will be. I feel like, if we had Kamala Harris running as president, or just any of the goofy Democrats that tried and failed and all ended up rallying behind Biden, I would have preferred any one of them over Biden. And like I understand the metaphor of like it's like taking the bus. You're not going to get dropped off directly in front of your house. Like that's fine, but I'd like to be somewhat in the neighborhood. I'd like to not have to walk 5 miles to get to where I'm going, because that's what it feels like now. So I don't know. I think it's a good place to kind of end things. I know it's sad and depressing, everybody, but fuck it. We've as we've said earlier, everything's not getting better, but at least people are more awake to it. And I feel like hopefully some sort of revolution, not necessarily armed, obviously, but some sort of revolution is coming.
I would also say too that the more people, the fewer Nancy Pelosi's we have in power, the better. Like if we can I do think that there is something to be said for replacing corporate Dems with people who actually represent what voters and Americans want. But I also think that that's like a fucking lifetime project. And so that's the thing, is that like in an acute emergency, it's basically like a house is burning down and you're like, well, you need to vote for better fire safety. Like, yeah.
Right. And like, look, I get it. Like AOC is not, the perfect social democrat or whatever that I would want, but shit, man, she's a lot better than the dude that she replaced. You have all these, the squad and whatever that seems to be expanding. You have a lot of Democrats who are, places of power are being won by progressive. Locally, Cori Bush beat Lacey Clay, who is an establishment Democrat. You do have progressives starting to win these smaller seats, which is incredibly important. It's very important to have progressives in those seats, because those progressives end up becoming the people in power in 20 to 30 years. And I definitely try to look at things in the way that a Republican looks at them. Like, how do I make things better for me and my party in 30 to 40 years? It's not necessarily a today or tomorrow thing. It is, how do I, and the Republicans, obviously, what can I do today so that I can make, $20 million in 10 years? We need to do that too. So I am optimistic in a lot of ways. I know that it is disappointing that AOC and Ilhan Omar, all these people will stand up behind Biden. That's fine. Voice your problems with that. Absolutely. But like also understand that this is we're stair stepping closer. And if you're gonna be this is it's not enough. I don't see you picking up the rifle and starting the glorious fucking revolution that it would take for this to happen. Like it's gonna be incrementalism unless you're gonna nut up and do something. And I don't like it any more than anybody else does. And I'm not telling you to go vote for Joe Biden. I still doubt that I will go vote for Joe Biden myself. But what I am saying, though, is that I don't know, maybe electoral politics is more preferable to a second civil war, I would say, just because I've been through war and it kind of fucking sucks, and I don't want the 330 million people in America to have to deal with it. So.
Yeah, we'll find out, though.
That's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, so do you want to roll? We'll do a quick preview of the bonus, which you spoke to Jasper Craven about right-wing veteran Carl Higbie and about right-wing veterans in general.
Yep. So Jasper Craven, we've had him on once or twice. He's got a Substack called Battleborn, which you should absolutely be reading. It's free, but you kick him a couple bucks because he's a good journalist. Jasper does a lot of military reporting. I've had him on to talk about the VA spending and everything. So we talk about Carl Higbie, former Navy SEAL, a man who once tried to come on to our show, and he is still being left unread in my DMs because fuck that. But Jasper is not a shitposting leftist like us. So Jasper, being an actual journalist, talks to Carl and presents a story of the man and of the background and just like of right wing veteran politics in general. So please enjoy this.
Trump, more than other Republicans, has really relied on these sorts of veteran surrogates to back him up just because he said so many inflammatory things towards the veteran community, whether that's the attack on the Khan family or the attack on John McCain, or, sort of suggesting that veterans with PTSD are weak, which is something Higby himself has said. And so, what these vets do besides collect a big paycheck is also just allow really dangerous rhetoric to stand, and sort of by their blessing, the Fox News viewer is made to feel more comfortable with accepting that as the truth. Veterans are the last trusted citizens of this country, essentially. And so their word carries a lot of power behind it, which the right has always understood. The left really hasn't. And so I think you can draw a pretty straight line between sort of rising xenophobia, and sort of demonization of the other, and these vets who are really pushing this narrative.
So in your article, you talk about how after World War II, we had one of the most, trumpeted class of veterans in politics. And this is where we got a lot of civil rights activists. And, we also got, McCarthy and McCarthyism. But we had a lot of progressive stuff post World War II. We had a lot of rebuilding the nation. We lost, millions of lives. The country itself didn't really get messed up, physically, because we weren't exactly easy to bomb because we're America and everybody else is, closer to Germany and Japan. But, we did have our own rebuilding. The whole world had a rebuilding that it had to do after that. And you had a lot of progressive, hey, let's help out. Let's make sure that we're taking care of our people. And maybe that's that kind of like post, the horrors of war, of World War II, where it really was like horrific, especially if you're a foot soldier, ground troop, tanker, anything like that, where you're up close and personal. Why is it, now we have a war, World War II versus the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? What do you think it is that makes things different this time around? What is it about, you would think, okay, we've got this war and it's been going on for a long time, and you would think that people would be sick and tired of it. Why do we still have such strong, not only right wing, but Democrat support for continuing the war machine, continuing to build up the Pentagon, and continuing the fight in Iraq and Afghanistan?
I think that's one of the biggest questions to ponder, sort of generally for people looking at militarism today. And it's hard to answer. And I think there's a lot of reasons for the shift. I think one of which is clearly that the military is now comprised of mostly poor people. There's just this massive disparity now. And the military is so aggressively recruiting from underprivileged, poor neighborhoods, which tend to often be conservative, that the military isn't really seen as a reflection of the country anymore. It's seen accurately as sort of a place where desperate people enlist to, hopefully make it into the middle class. And I think there's a lot of resentment in Southern poor communities because they feel this burden more than, New England liberals. They are seeing their communities wiped out by these wars. They're seeing their sons, daughters, friends, neighbors coming home fucked up. And so they really, they embrace that, and they take it as a sign of, or sort of a badge of pride in some ways, because, they're making these major sacrifices. But I think they also just really resent all of the liberals who don't serve. I think that contributes to it. I also think that, the Nazis were a clear-cut enemy, and it was really easy to rally behind them as a common enemy and sort of exit that conflict with rejuvenated sense of democracy and wanting to really uphold those beliefs and seeing the danger of sort of slipping from them. The the wars we're fighting now are much more complex and nuanced. The basic justification for them has never been proven, and the whole conflict is sort of built on lies.
I gotta say, Jasper, I don't know who we're fighting in either country anymore. Like, is it
Right.
is it ISIS? I was told ISIS was defeated, but ISIS is back. Is it the Taliban, who we're doing negotiations with, which is great, but also there's other militant groups that the Taliban can't keep under control themselves. So it is like a massive clusterfuck, and it's very strange to me to come out of multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan and not think this is all fucked up and I don't know what we're doing. Like, it's very strange to me to come out of that and be like, nope, I love the military even more than before. Other than, you wanted to go in and kind of fuck people up in the beginning because you're just a bit of a sociopath.
Yeah, I think that's totally on point.
Which, not to say that for those listeners who are still in the military, and I totally understand doing it for the healthcare. There's a reason I extended my contract so I can have TRICARE for the rest of my life just in case I need it. So I fucking understand, but it is an odd mindset. But it's a mindset that we see can make you a lot of friends and make you a lot of money. I mean, Carl even says, kind of that this is just the way that things are in the military. Like that, he says that the veterans are drawn to something that's strong. So he thinks that Democrats are weak, and that's why veterans are drawn to the Republican Party. But if you do look at polling for the military, we're pretty much 50-50. We're fairly split. Whether or not we're going to be, vote Republican or vote Democrat. I know that Trump has lost a lot of support, with the military, but I know it's a very it's a broken system, man. And Carl really brings that out in this interview about how it's just this is just what we do. And it is. It's Nate and I have talked often that it's perfectly acceptable in the military to say, we should just turn Iraq into a glass parking lot and let, Allah figure it out. That's a normal thing to say in the Army. Nobody, if you've got kind of a progressive, if you say it around me, I'll tell you to shut the fuck up. But, in general, if you're around a bunch of infantry guys, you'll get a lot of heads nodding and yeah, our jobs would be a lot easier if we could just kill them all and let God sort them out. And that is kind of where we're at now. And I would have had that same thought about the Nazis, but it is hard to have that rallying cry behind okay, you're Polish and you're from Holland and you're from Australia and you're British and I'm an American and we're all going to go and be a part of this thing together to fight off this evil. But right now we're fighting an ideology, and not only does our war strengthen their ideology, but it's basically just building our own, which is where we're getting what we have now. And I'm glad that we have, more of an anti-war movement happening, because it really kind of died out after Obama was elected. The anti-war movement just flatlined, and then Obama did the surge, and everybody's like, yeah, that should work, right? We just shove a bunch of troops in there and let them all point their guns and shoot, and eventually everybody's dead and we'll be fine. But now it's coming back, post Obama with Trump and everything, which is irritating, Jasper. I got to say, it's real fucking irritating, but I'm glad that everybody's back on board. But I swear to God, if Biden gets elected and it goes away again, I'm going to scream into a pillow.
I don't know what the hell's going to happen. I mean, Biden is mixed. I mean, he voted to invade Iraq, obviously, but was against the surge, and I don't know where he stands, just because he is a politician who doesn't like to be clear in his statements.
All right, everybody, thank you for listening. Follow me at Army Strang, follow Nate at In These Deserts, follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. Get us on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere that you have media that is social. We are probably there. If you have any suggestions for the podcast, for people for us to discuss, to talk about, always feel free to DM one of us or send an email to sergeantjoker@hellofawaytodie.com, and we'll get back to you. But until next week, Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Take care.